Hi everybody, my name's Matthew Mercer. I'm a senior graduate recruiter for My Apportunity, and I'm here today doing the Facebook Live event to cover the following topic, which is where to start with your law firm applications. So really the format today is I'll give you a bit of an overview of who My Apportunity are, who the student lawyer are, who have kindly sort of given me access to their Facebook account today. I had a few Facebook issues a bit earlier, and really I'll be talking in detail then as to what are the starting processes for looking to apply to law firms, and what things should I be looking for, how should I do my research, and so forth. Firstly is a bit of an overview. So Apportunity, they're a new online career service for aspiring lawyers. So we connect you to a graduate recruiter that you want for personal guidance with your applications, interviews and assessment centres, and every graduate recruiter in our team has at least 5 years worth of experience in their industry, and we really feel strongly that this is how careers advice should be. Expert advice from people like myself who've reviewed thousands of applications and conducted hundreds of interviews for law firms, and are really giving you advice which is tailored based on what your needs are. The student lawyer, as many of you probably know, provides study and careers advice for aspiring lawyers. It's entirely student community, so it's written, promoted by all students who understand your law student problems. Fantastic resource for everybody to use. Lots of helpful guides, profiles of law firms on there, really worth checking out, particularly and very pertinent to what I'm going to be talking about today. So really the whole purpose of this video is to help you with your training contract and VAC schemes application process and deciding sort of where you should start with law firms. And firstly, I mean, talking about the initial steps of what you should be doing in this very long journey you'll be undertaking. Firstly, I would highly recommend finding a website very, very much like Student Lawyer being an excellent example, where you've got a huge amount of information that has been consolidated into one website, which gives information on, what does a vacation scheme comprise of, how do I secure a training contract, what the various routes into law are, plus a lot of them have, like the student law, have profiles of a lot of law firms, and crucially actually do have some quite key insights as to trainee intake numbers, profit per equity partner, and also maybe some profiles of trainees talking about their experiences as well. So these are really excellent resources, these websites, for you as aspiring solicitors, and I would highly recommend bookmarking these and favouriting them for future reference, for you to refer to throughout your journey. Another useful tool that I use very frequently, and my colleagues at Apportunity do as well, is the Law Society's Find a Solicitor tool, which is on www.lawsociety.org.uk/find-a-solicitor. And this basically allows you to search for solicitors by geographical location and area of law. So for those of you that have already thought about what areas of law you specifically want to go into practice, this is an excellent tool for you to use to actually find out what firms are local to me that specialise in this area, and crucially gives you some contacts as well that you could reach out to over LinkedIn to ask for some advice or perhaps even some work experience, which we'll talk about a bit later on. It's also very well recommended to look at your network and see if you know anybody who's currently working in a law firm that you could reach out to. That could be a friend or family member. And really, I think that's very good starting point to get some tips from them as to, what did you do when you started out? Can you give me any tips as to how I should go about approaching this process, and if you don't know anybody in the law profession, speak to your lecturers at university, speak to your career service. A lot of lecturers at universities are actually ex-solicitors themselves. So they will have contacts in the industry, and crucially they'll be able to talk to you about the areas law that they're interested in, that you're interested in, and sort of the various routes that you can go about applying, and actually give you a bit of a quite an honest review as to what it's like looking for. And also I would highly recommend LinkedIn as a resource, as well as the other social media sites, Twitter, Facebook, to follow law firms, as well as people like the Student Lawyer as well, where advice is there. But also from a networking perspective, things like LinkedIn are very useful for you to actually reach out, directly contact recruiters in law firms, trainees in law firms, and ask for them for advice as well. And you'll be surprised and quite pleased with how well the response you'll get back off that, and how valuable it'll be as well. So really the next step is then, what are the different types of law firms that are out there, looking at sort of putting a list together of these specific law firms that I want to apply to. And there's a lot of phrases and groups of law firms that are out there that can be quite confusing to get your head around as to when you're thinking about what type of law firms I want to apply for. So I'm going to explain a bit now about what are the different types of law firms that are out there that will sort of hopefully feed into what you're looking for. So firstly, probably one you've already heard of are the Magic Circle law firms. Now, the phrase Magic Circle, actually nothing to do with magic whatsoever, and is actually coined by legal journalists back in the 1990s. And basically for the past 15 years, it's referred to a distinct group of 5 firms. Those are Allen & Overy, Clifford Chance, Freshfields, Linklaters, and Slaughter & May. Now, what makes those firms different from other legal firms in the UK? Well, firstly, they are all substantially sizable law firms with headquarters in London. They have also sizable international operations. All of them have a very large trainee intake of about 100 per year as well. And they do have a reputation, good or bad, depending on how you view it, as working their graduates quite hard and demanding quite a bit from them. And the work with them is very heavily focused on corporate finance and banking, which obviously being based in the city is at the heart of the city in terms of the clients they're working with, and thus it's an area that the firms specialise in. Now, calling these firms the best in the UK market would be an untrue statement. However, they certainly are the best in terms of the type of legal work, and as I talked about, finance, corporate, banking, they are some of the best law firms in the world for delivering advice on that. And certainly as a trainee and a prospective solicitor, they have the appeal of you being able to work on very high profile cases with some very well-renowned clients, and they give you obviously the opportunity to travel internationally if you're interested in that, with many of their offices being based overseas. And they also, I think they really do enable their qualified trainees to get the most of there as well. Now, Sammy has just made a question actually in terms of academic. I'm just coming on to that, Sammy, actually. One of the caveats with Magic Circle is they have very stringent entry criteria. So A-level results have to be at the absolute peak. So we're talking 3 A's here, Sammy. So unfortunately, the grades you've put, CCD there, wouldn't likely sort of get you much of a foot in. And I mean, one of the other things here is that it's incredibly competitive in the Magic Circle, given how prestigious they are. That said, there is a lot of sort of weight behind your motivation, your drive, your attitude, and also any work experience you've picked up as well, which you can reference. So I certainly wouldn't say absolutely don't apply for them based on those grades, but I would certainly consider other options as well as the Magic Circle, and that comes onto a point I'll make in a bit later on. Now, the next group of firms are called the Silver Circle law firms. Now, again, this is a sort of recently coined phrase in the last sort of few years, which I think it came up with another sort of famous media platform, which name escapes me at the moment. And essentially, the Silver Circle refers to the band of law firms that just fall just below the Magic Circle, but actually post considerably higher profit per equity partner, PEP for short, which actually means you break down the total overall profit of a firm by the number of equity partners, and the Silver Circle tend to have higher of that than the Magic Circle, and also revenue per lawyer as well, which is fairly self-explanatory, and those averages are higher than the nation's legal market overall. Now, the firms that are generally seen in the Silver Circle include Ashurst, Berwin Leighton Paisner, BLP, Herbert Smith Freehills, McFarlane's, and Travis Smith as well. And I think the important thing with the Silver Circle is that they offer very similar quality of work to the Magic Circle, but without the stern atmosphere associated with those firms. So again, a very good consideration for you as an aspiring solicitor as well. Obviously, they still are demanding environments, but the quality of work is still very high, and it's a great sort of starting point for you as a trainee solicitor as well, given the opportunities that you will get there. Another sort of major group that's worth talking about are the international and US law firms, and certainly over the past couple of decades we've seen many international law firms, mostly from the US, have set up shop in London, and really the sort of draw of that is the sort of legal market and the type of resources there, but also actually tapping into the legal graduates of the UK. Now, the main difference obviously between getting a training contract at one of these, say, American law firms versus the English law firms is, A, you get significantly higher pay as a trainee working for one of these firms, and their newly qualified lawyers enjoy a significantly higher pay versus counterparts in some of the UK law firms. The kind of downside, or kind of the caveat really with this, is that they tend to have a very small trainee intake comparatively to the Magic Circle, Silver Circle. So it may only be a handful of trainees that they take in. Now, really, this can be seen as a blessing and a curse. On the pro side, it means that you'll have the opportunity where because there's fewer trainees, you'll get more attention from senior colleagues and given more opportunities internally. The downside is that you'll have less peers of your own age and in similar situations to socialise with as well, which obviously is part of the whole trainee experience for a lot of the bigger firms with larger intakes. Some of the other firms to consider as well, and I'm not going to sort of spend too much time on these, but again, they fall into their own groups, and you'll find there's lots of different terminology out there in the market. So you'll have medium-sized law firms. Really, that name is coined to firms that again have fairly sizable operations in the UK and potentially a couple of offices abroad, but certainly not to the scale of the Magic Circle, Silver Circle, for example. National firms, so these firms have offices spanning the length and breadth of the UK, and typically with their trainees, they tend to have them based in one single office that will likely be outside of London, but some of them do have London headquarters. Or you might actually find that your trainee will be based between two different offices, or maybe two or three, so you may move around a bit, which may be an appeal to you if you want to see different sides of the country and get different exposures in different cities. Regional firms, another consideration. So those are those just based in a specific region in the UK. Obviously, much more focused on regional-based clients, and I'll come on to my point about shortly about evaluating regional versus city firms, which is quite a good consideration to have for you as an aspiring solicitor. You've got your niche boutique firms. These specialise in a sort of few specific areas of practice. So they may specialise, for example, in medical law or sports law, for example. You've got your high street firms. So these are really local firms operating out of a single office who tend to have a mix of practices who tend to focus on family, criminal, private client and taxation law. So much more sort of smaller scale. But you may find as a trainee, you may be one of maybe two trainees, and you actually get involved with a breadth of those different practices during your training contract. Kind of the less common, but again worth mentioning, in-house legal departments. Now, these aren't overly common, and not many of them offer specific training contracts. What's more common is that you'll likely find work experience placement here as part of a training contract with another firm. So, for example, you may get a training contract, say, with the Magic Circle. During your 2-year training contract will be placed on secondment with one of their clients working in their in-house team. Fantastic opportunity to actually see what it's like working from an in-house perspective as well. And finally, the governments do have and offer a few training contracts every year, typically within the sort of local legal councils, the government legal service, and also other public bodies such as the Crown Prosecution Service as well. So you can go to the government website, read up more about what that entails as well in terms of their application process. But for those of you potentially interested in public sector or government areas, it's definitely worth a consideration. Before we move on to the next question, I've had a question from Nicholas here. What about Commonwealth qualified attorneys, Barbados for instance, how should they apply? Very good question, Nicholas. You will want to sort of look at the firms that you're looking to apply to. You want to look at their stances based on basically Commonwealth qualified attorneys. Typically there is an examination called the QLTS, which you may be aware of, which is basically a transferable qualification as well. Different firms will have different sort of processes with international students and people that have qualified overseas that are looking to qualify in the UK and apply for training contracts here. Everybody's different, so I can't really give you a specific answer to that, but my suggestion would be that with the firms that you're looking at, look at what their policies are on their websites. Typically will have those, but if they don't have them, reach out to their graduate recruiters and ask them specifically about what their stance is on people that have qualified overseas that are looking to qualify here as well, and what sort of support they offer you as well. That would be my best suggestion to you, Nicholas, so hopefully that's helped. So the next thing I'm sort of focusing on really is some common questions that you're looking at, and I've kind of given you a bit of an overview of all the different types of firms that are out there. So, as aspiring solicitors as yourselves, what should I be looking at specifically? And one of the big things that I mentioned already is city versus regional firms. So the kind of contrast is really city firms. Obviously, London is host to many law firms, many of these boasting FTSE 100 listed companies as clients, plus they're likely to have a number of offices abroad that I talked about. And working in a city firm means that you'll be amongst the highest paying trainee solicitors in the country. The downside to that is poor work-life balance, and it's very well known in the market that as a trainee working in a city law firm, you could be doing 70 to 80 hour weeks. Now, I don't tarnish all of them with the same brush. I know some of them have got better work-life balances, but it is kind of a very common thing that you'll find with these city firms. Very long hours, demanding work from there, but on the flip side, obviously very good pay, high-profile clients that you can work with, and opportunities that you perhaps wouldn't get in a regional firm. Regional firms, and I guess the sort of more common regional locations are cities like Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Manchester and Oxford, but you'll find regional law firms based in most cities in the UK. Some of these have headquarters in London, so you will still get the opportunity to work with high profile clients, but probably you'll find that it's a bit more restricted in terms of the quality of clientele that they have when compared to, say, the city firms, and they may also not have the international offices as well, so the opportunity to travel abroad as part of your traineeship might not be available to you. As you'd expect, work-life balance is much better at these firms as well. Quite a lot of firms now are offering flexible working policies, working for home practices as well. So actually it's much better suited to people that want to have a good work-life balance, go out and socialise after work, might have a young family, or have hobbies that you want to dedicate to as well. So that's a serious consideration, and obviously trade-off being that I've already talked about the quality of the clientele might not be up to the scratch that you're looking for, and also salaries for the trainees are generally lower when compared to the city firms as well. But again, it all comes down to what your motivations are, and I will talk about that in a moment. One of the other considerations, and I've mentioned it a little bit, is actually the practice areas of laws as well. Now, for a lot of you who are in your first and second years of your law degree, or perhaps you're about to go into your first year of law, you might have no idea what area of practice you're going. And granted, I've interviewed plenty of third year students and people who've graduated and done their LPC who have no idea what they want to go into qualify, and that's not an issue whatsoever. Most training contracts you'll find will be structured in a way where you will have a seat rotation of 4 seats over 2 years in different areas of law, and that will be varied across a broad range of practice, from real estate to corporate to commercial to private clients and so on and so forth. So actually they will give you exposure to working practice in different areas. However, for those of you that have identified a specific area of practice that you want to specialise in, this really should be factored into your research when you're looking at what law firm should I apply to. And because again, it goes back to my earlier point about those niche boutique firms who specialise in a certain area, and you certainly should tailor your search so that you are identifying firms that offer the best prospects for that specific discipline, as that will obviously aid you tremendously in sort of your specialising in that practice area long term. So how do I go about choosing the right law firm? And I think there's really 3 key areas you should consider here. Number 1 is the areas of law and client base, as I talked about, and really attending law firms, open days, vacation schemes and other work placements should give you a rough idea as to what area of law appeals to you alongside, your preferences from your degree. Location, salary and lifestyle. I've talked about work-life balance. Where do I want to be based? Do I want to be based near to home? Do I want to live in the big smoke of London and have all of that prestigious city-based lifestyle? Or actually, I want to work in a smaller city, like Oxford, for example. That's a consideration. And obviously, salary. Do I want the big bucks straight away, or is salary not important for me? And obviously, lifestyle. Do I want time out of work to be able to dedicate to other things that are important to me? And finally, the training contract structure should be a consideration for you as well. Obviously, I've talked about the standard format, which is basically completing 4 seats over the course of 2 years, so each seat lasting 6 months. But saying that, some firms have different structures. So I know that there are firms out there that offer, say, 6 seats lasting 4 months each, and throw in pro bono, so charitable work, and client secondment work as well, and also maybe throw in specialist practice areas that you might not get in other training contracts. So that's definitely worth looking into as well, as about, do I want maybe more seats in the same time frame to get better exposure to different areas of law? And again, law firms will talk about what their structure is on their graduate recruitment page of their websites. Really, I'm sort of conscious of the time. We're sort of getting to nearby now. So what I want to sort of talk about very briefly is what should you be applying for? And really, there's sort of a number of different areas here. So firstly, legal work experience, which really talks about informal work experience, shadowing, working on a part-time basis at a law firm. Really do look into this. Make sure you're looking in advance. Work experience that you can get at any stage of your career, whether you've got some time over the summer, whether you've got a bit of work experience you'd like to do during other holiday periods, or part-time work that fits around your studies. I would recommend tremendously to you, because it will help give you a bit of an insight as to what it's like working for a law firm as well. And you can get this through a number of channels, through applying directly, networking with people from the firm, law fairs, social media as well. They may advertise it on there. Another option is sandwich year, gap year as well. So a lot of firms are offering sandwich year courses now for those of you that can do a 4-year law LLB with your 3rd year spent doing a year out. Or actually, a lot of firms now are offering these gap years. So you finish your schools, and before you go to university, you want to see what it's like working in a law firm. So a lot of them offer gap years now. So that's something that's definitely worth looking into. Open days and insight evenings, again, highly recommend looking into those. These are open to undergraduates, graduates, law and non-law, and really are an opportunity to go into the office, network. You get an itinerary of talks and partners and trainees and the recruitment team, guided tours of the office. May even do like a group exercise to help build up skills like commercial awareness, for example. And then obviously you've got the obvious 2, vacation schemes. For those of you that don't know, vacation schemes are a period of work experience at a law firm, usually run for 1 to 2 weeks in the summer. And these aren't just work experience you would expect with some of the other areas, but actually many law firms use this as an opportunity to hunt down potential training contract recruits. And actually you'll find that a lot of people that do well on the vacation scheme will be called back to attend an assessment centre for a training contract. And some firms actually tie the application process for a vacation scheme with the training contract as well. So again, definitely worth looking and applying for those as well. And obviously the training contract being the ultimate thing that you'll be looking to apply for. Obviously 2-year placement that is as undertaken by trainee solicitors after they finish their year-long LPC. So you do have to complete the LPC beforehand. You can apply for a training contract from your penultimate year of university, third year, also second year, third year as well. You'll find that some firms will also offer financial support for your LPC as well, so you can apply early and then get them to fund that. But you will need to complete the LPC before you actually start your training contract. But you'll find that actually some firms then bring people on for basically as work experience as maybe part-time paralegals while they're doing their studies as well, to actually get them a bit of insight into what it's like working there and get them up to speed with the processes as well. Obviously training contracts incredibly competitive. I got a stat here from 2015. There were 5,500 training contracts, obviously far more LPC students than there are spaces. It's very competitive. Thousands miss out every year on getting a training contract. So it's really important to start your preparations for this early. Research law firms, get work experience over the summer if you can and as much as possible, and get involved with extracurricular activities at university as well. And I can't stress that enough. Really to sort of wrap up, and I will answer Sammy and to Rose your questions shortly. I'm just going to wrap up with these points here. As you can probably tell from what I've been saying here, research is incredibly key. There's a lot of information out there. It's quite dizzying to digest all of it and understand where do I start. But it's also about researching yourself. So, taking a step back and thinking, what do I want to achieve in my career as a solicitor? What firm is best suited for me? And, what are the most important factors that matter to me most? And I think that's a really important thing to get your head around before you start putting that list together of law firms. Because if you go into a firm and you're quite keen on having a good work-life balance and you end up in a city firm where you're doing 17 hours, it's not going to work for you. So, really understand what you want to get out of it and what's important to you before you apply that. Obviously, I've talked about using sites like the Student Lawyer for research, and again, great website built by students like yourselves for resource just for you to use, and that'll obviously include lots of different information you can use there. And obviously when you do get onto your applications, guys, do tailor all of your applications. It's incredibly important, and I would highly advise that you pick no more than a handful of law firms, so say 3 or 4 law firms to apply to. Why? Well, because as a graduate recruiter, it's very, very obvious when you get an application in that's clearly been copied and pasted a dozen times and spammed out to a number of law firms in the hope of landing an opportunity. But by targeting a few different law firms, it means that you tailor your application. You can do some very in-depth research into that firm and then take that forward as well. So I would recommend, and I've known trainees at my firm and other firms who have spent weeks, months on their one application form for a training contract for a firm. It sounds like a lot of time, but actually they want to make sure it's perfect and it's tailored as well, and they'll go over and over it again, and they will take time out of their studies to dedicate to that as well. And those are the strong applications that we get through more so, and it will make them stand out more than those that have just spammed and applied. So I've had a couple of questions here. So Sammy's asked, are there any finance available for LPC? So yes, Sammy, you'll find that if you apply for a training contract and successful in securing one while you're still studying your LLB, you'll find that firms will offer you financial support for your LPC while you're as a sort of future trainee there as well. So if you are successful in that process, obviously do check. It varies from firm to firm, but you'll find with a lot of the larger firms, national firms, city firms, they will offer you financial support for your LPC if you're successful in securing a training contract with them. And Rose says, are vacation schemes good for graduates? Absolutely, Rose. Really, really useful to get, as I've talked about. They are very useful experiences. As I said, you've got not just the graduate team, but also solicitors that take trainees on who will be viewing you throughout that week, and they will be sort of looking to see whether you're going to be a good fit for them. And really, they build things on work experience, skills training, and presentations to really build up your knowledge of what a law firm does and what they do specifically as well. And it gives you a really good appreciation for the culture of the firm, what the kind of people you'd be working for as well. So highly recommend looking into vacation schemes as well. And Eleanor has just put a question up here. Gaining legal experience in another jurisdiction, does it count as work experience in the UK? A lot of firms will count that, Eleanor, absolutely. So I would definitely include that in your application. I mean, obviously, laws vary overseas as well, so if you're tailoring it for a specific practice area, there may be some differences, but any legal work experience you've picked up, regardless of which country it's in, is worth referencing in detail in your applications, because you'll find actually that will score you higher in terms of points in when they're marking the application. So absolutely does count as work experience in the UK. So hopefully that answers your questions, guys. So just to sort of wrap up, I'll also really point you to the direction of the Student Lawyer. As I said, brilliant website for research for you guys, www.thestudentlawyer.com, and also lots of useful how sort of articles and opportunities. And also want to point you towards Apportunity, who I work for. So that is www.myapportunity.co.uk, where we'll review your CVs, your cover letters, your application forms, and conduct mock interviews for you to make sure that you'll prepare. I can see a couple of you squeezing in some final questions here, so I'll just go over those quickly. So, Rose, yes, very good question. Unfortunately, I can't give you a definitive answer on that. There are still a lot of unknowns with the SQE changes with the SRA. So it's not the last year yet. There are a lot of changes to the qualification route and what that's going to be looking like. I don't see firms binning training contracts any time in the distant future. But there's still a lot of unknowns there as well. And Sammy's asked, I'm in my final year at university and the next available training contract is 2019. Yeah, it's a good point, Sammy. A lot of firms will basically advertise their training contracts 2 years in advance as well. So there will be that gap that you'll have. You may find some firms that will do a year in advance or not, but most of the larger firms will do 2 years in advance. You're obviously still fine to apply for your final year. But again, it goes back to my earlier point about looking at work experience, or maybe securing a full-time job as a paralegal or a case handler or legal assistant in a firm or an area of law that you're interested in, and really building up that work experience so that when the next training application comes around, you can reference that in your application forms, your interviews that you have. Rose, you're getting your money's worth here today. 2-1, but ABC for levels, but I work as paralegal for Freshfields. Do you think it's worth applying for training contracts in Magic Circle firms, even though I didn't meet their academic requirements? Yes, Rose, I do actually. I think that with the applications that are there, you're scored on a lot of different areas. Legal work experience does count for a lot, as well as your academia. So it's not a be or end all if you don't have the absolute top grades. The fact that you're obviously paralegal for a well-renowned firm as well helps massively. So I would absolutely say that it's definitely worth you applying. With those grades and that experience, because experience counts for a hell of a lot when compared to academia, and actually a lot of law firms prefer prospective trainees to have work experience as well. So thank you, guys. As I said, my name is Matthew. I'm the Senior Graduate Recruiter for My Apportunity. I hope you found this session to be useful. Thank you for all of your questions and for paying in. As I said, please check out the Student Lawyer and My Apportunity for more information and for help with your application forms if you want them reviewed. And I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you.